turned yellow and refused to follow. So me and Busky and Joe ended up chasing them horses all by ourselves, and for that episode and a few scrapes I've been in the past, I was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor at age 26. Age 26, Congressional Medal of Honor. Well, I got me a big itch to go to New York, where I heard they made a play out of one of the stories Ned wrote about me. New York City's a whole different world. Still is. Horse-drawn cabs and trolleys line the streets, with the exception of a mounted policeman now and again, not a solo rider to be seen. I was treated like a real celebrity and invited to a lot of high society places. They seemed plenty excited at my buckskin clothes and found my frontier style dancing. To be curious. But I was curious to go see some actor pretending to be me, Buffalo Bill. So I went to the play and they found out I was in the audience and insisted I got up on stage, where I acquired me an acute case of stage fright. I got up there, went to talk, and even the front row could not hear me. I muttered out something silly and wanted to get off that stage as fast as I could. An actor I was not. But still, the show's manager offered me $500 a week to play myself. And all this time, I'd been doing it for free. I told him he might as well make an actor out of a government mule. And I hightailed it back to Nebraska to do what I do best, scout and hunt. But somehow that next fall, Ned Buntline convinced me to come back to New York, try my hand at acting, saying that there was money in it. And in spite of my stage fright, I went. Except this time I brought my scout friend, Texas Jack Omohundro, with me. And even though he rode with the Confederacy, I liked him. He was a real practical joker. He used to like to raise up folks' stirrups after they went to bed, so they'd think they grew an inch taller overnight. Yeah, it was fun. When we got to New York, Ned was real excited to see us, and he wrote up a whole new play in about 4 hours for our debut called Scouts of the Prairie. Opening night was packed. Not a seat to be had, standing room only. Texas Jack and I would get up on stage, and the same thing happened. I had stage fright, and I froze. All these eyes looking at me. Ned was up there just trying to get us to say anything at all. Finally said, "Bill, what have you been doing lately?" We just sent us a man in the audience I'd been on a hunt with, and I said, "Well, I've been hunting with Milligan." Well, I guess the whole town knew what a bad hunter Milligan was, because they all started laughing. So I continued to make up my own script, and the show went on from there. The show, they were thinking that was all part of the act. So I made up my own lines, made up my own script, and it was a 5-act play with no head or tail. And it mattered not at which act we commenced or ended. Texas Jack and I'd be up there firing away with our blanks, fighting fake Indians, taking red flannel scalps, saving women, saving more women, saving more, we like saving women. The crowd loved it. Scouts of the Prairie was a hit, and I was hooked on show business. The critics were not kind. One of them wrote, "If Ned Buntline took 4 hours to write that play, it's hard to imagine what took him so long." In fact, during one of the acts, when the fake Indians had Ned all tied up and ready to be burned at the stake, one of the audience members offered the Indians a match. They were kinder to me and Texas Jack and only weren't really actors. So we continued to do our little play for a few more weeks in places like Boston, Chicago, and St. Louis. But spring was coming, and Texas Jack and I headed back to Nebraska, where we got the big idea that for next year's combination, it'd be even better to have our old part of Wild Bill aboard. and we convinced him to be in the show. Life would be good. Hunt in the spring and summer and act in the fall and winter. So I packed up my wife Lulu and my 3 kids, Arda, Oregon, Kit, who I named after Kit Carson, and we had to move to Rochester, New York, as I'd become fond of that city. But it wasn't such a good idea having a Wild Bill aboard after all. He drank too much tenderfoot, getting fist fights with the stage managers and sometimes the audience. And he always shot us blanks too close to the other actors' legs, burning them. And he said it was just to make them war dance more accurately. My old friend was getting meaner and meaner every day. When I sat him down to talk about it, he told me he just thought he had to get back to where the air hadn't been breathed once already. But I think it was more that the stage lights were starting to irritate the glaucoma that he was getting in his eyes. His failing eyesight had already affected his ability to work as a lawman, because he had already accidentally shot his own deputy, Mike Williams, in the dark back in Abilene, Kansas. But whatever it was, we parted as friends, and that was the last time I'd ever see him, because he gets shot back by that no-good Jack McCall in Deadwood, South Dakota in 1876. And I remember very well it was 1876, because a lot of things happened that year. My son Kit, he died of scarlet fever. Telephone wasn't invented. Colorado became state in 1876. And I was asked to come back to my old unit, the 5th Cavalry, and help out with the Sioux Indian War. Word was that over 800 Cheyenne Braves had just left the Red Cloud Reservation to meet up with Chief Sitting Bull Sioux. Sitting Bull, his friend Crazy Horse, and their Braves had just wiped out that General Custer I told you about, over 200 of his men, at a place called Little Bighorn up in Montana, a few days before America was to celebrate its 100th birthday on the 4th of July. And tempers were hot. Well, I was assigned to Colonel Merritt's cavalry and try and keep this big war party meeting from meeting up at a place called War Bonnet Creek. Yeah. They hadn't crossed it by the time we got there, so we waited for them from high up on a ridge where we had our cavalry hidden behind, waiting to surprise them. All of a sudden in the distance I could see a small band of Braves whooping it up and racing right towards us in a real hurry. Upon further examination with my field glass, I could see that they were in hot pursuit, 2 mounted soldiers carrying messages for us. The messages probably said, "The Indians are coming." We could see that. We had to do something. We couldn't send in the cavalry we had waiting behind and ruin the surprise. So I convinced Colonel Merritt to let me pick up 15 of my best scouts and join the fight. The fight was in full swing when one brave jerked his horse towards me, raised his rifle and said, "I know you, Pahaska. You want to fight? Come fight me." Well, Pahaska's Indian for long hair, and I'm reasonably sure that he was talking to me. And I recognized him as Yellow Hair. Cheyenne Chief named that because of the blonde woman's scalp that he prized. Our horses raced straight for each other. We each fired, him missing me, and yours truly accidentally wounding his horse. And both our horses went down about the same time as mine stepped in a prairie dog hole and fell. We were now on foot, about 30 paces apart. But I gave him that fighting line. Let me tell you, he was one tough brave, and I don't remember ever fighting a tougher man. But luckily this time I came out on top. And I took his war bonnet and the first scalp for Custer. And then, not liking that too much, I now had the rest of the 800 Cheyenne Braves coming right for me in a real hurry. Colonel Merritt could see I was in big trouble and signaled the cavalry come join the fight. And I was mighty relieved to see those Braves hightailed out of there when the cavalry showed. And once again, my scalp remained where God had put it. The funny thing about that scalp. Back then, it was not a big deal for a red man or a white man to take a scalp as a trophy. It was not a big deal. It was done every day. And I thought perhaps this particular scalp would make for good publicity at my friend Moses Cairngood's general store front window back in Rochester. So I sent it back to Rochester. But unfortunately, the box that the scalp was in arrived to Lulu just one day prior to the letter that I had sent her telling her not to open the box. She reached in and fainted dead away, and we would discuss that later. But as exciting as all this was, this would be the last time I would scout for the Army like that. Folks were hungry to see the frontier, and the frontier was disappearing. Indians were being tricked and cheated and forced to live on land that wasn't fit to live on. And buffalo were being slaughtered just for their tongues and their skins and their bodies left to rot out on the prairie. My friend Texas Jack would die of pneumonia up in Leadville, Colorado, just a few days before his 34th birthday. And I got him a nice headstone that's still up there today. But everything in my world was changing. For the 4th of July celebration, Old Glory blowout that they were planning near my beloved Scouts Rest Ranch in North Platte, Nebraska, I offered to make it a real hoedown by holding some of the riding and roping contests that I held on my ranch. Cowboys have been thought of as low people and made fun of. And I thought maybe this round of mine give them a chance to show the skill that was required to do that kind of work, and about 1,000 cowboys showed up to do just that. And some folks say this is the first big rodeo, and I don't know about that. But I do know that it proved to be the model for my Buffalo Bill's Wild West exhibition. In 1883, folks would get to see that vision come to life, a vision inspired long ago by my cousin Horace's trick riding and the show the Spotted Tails Braves put on for the Russian Duke. I was tired of doing plays in theaters. I wanted to make it a really big show with horses, cowboys, Indians, buffalo, even the Deadwood stagecoach, show folks what the frontier was really like. My friend Wild Bill tried to do something like that a couple years before he died up in Niagara Falls, but that particular venture went bad when a so-called trained bear in the show smelled some sausages nearby and ran through the panicking crowd to get to him. And I guess Bill and his partners neglected to put a fence up, because all the other animals got loose as well, and the next few days were spent rounding them up all over town. And as good as he was with his pistols and his fists, Wild Bill was a terrible businessman. But my show got to be such a success it required 3 long trains to carry the hundreds of animals, peoples, and props. And in big outdoor arenas all across America, we'd show folks how the Indians lived, stagecoach robberies, buffalo hunts, trick riding, and maybe best of all, the sweetheart of my show, my little Missy, that's what I call her, sharpshooter Annie Oakley. Annie was born Phoebe Ann Moses and handed from family to family when her pa died and her mom ran into hard times. And somewhere along the line, trying to put food on the table, she got pretty good at shooting small game like rabbits and squirrels and such. And she got to be in demand by some of the more selective restaurant owners whose upscale clientele preferred not to pick out buckshot from their dinner. Well, at 15, she got put up in a shooting contest against a well-known shot named Frank Butler, and she won shooting a rifle that was almost bigger than she was. She was only 4'11". But she ended up marrying Frank about a year later, so I guess he won after all. And they both joined the show, and everybody loved it when Annie skipped out onto the arena. Everybody loved Annie. She was the very first female superstar who showed the world that women and girls could do things as good as men and boys. And everybody loved Annie. From 90 feet away, Annie would shoot a playing card that Frank would hold sideways in his hand, his trusting hand. She would shoot it and split it and then hit both halves before they hit the ground. She was that good. Her and Frank had stayed married for 50 years. When Annie finally died, Frank stopped eating and died 18 days later. It was only because of Annie being in the show that Sitting Bull, that chief who wiped out Custer all those years ago, he joined the show. He loved Annie. He called Annie his adopted daughter and nicknamed her Little Sure Shot. Yeah. He was pretty grouchy and somewhat unpredictable. He used to demand in writing that he got all the sale of all the profits from his autographed pictures that we sold. And then he'd turn around and give the money away to all the orphans and the street kids that I would admit free to the show. Hey, not many people know this, but I'll tell you, as he told me. As a young Indian brave, he was not very remarkable, and his Indian name was Slow. I bet he's glad that they changed it, because Chief Slow does not sound very scary. Hurry up, here comes Chief Slow. And he's not the only one who changed his name. Crazy Horse, before he changed his name down to Vision, his name was Curly. So at one point in time, Custer could have been wiped out by Slow and Curly. That would have been embarrassing. The chief had only stayed with the show for a year, but my former foe was now my friend, one of my best friends. He'd only stayed for a year. We exchanged gifts when he left, and I gave him one of my best horses and a sombrero that he treasured. I was brought along a big old band and had him start every show with a Star-Spangled Banner. This is 50 years before it became our national anthem. And some folks give me credit with it becoming such, and why it's still played at the beginning of a lot of events these days. So I want you to think of me when you're trying to hit those high notes. Everybody in my show got paid the same. Cowboys, Indians, women, musicians, everybody got paid the same. I guess I would be what you call the world's first equal opportunity employer. And speaking of equal opportunity, I would stand tall with my friend from Rochester, New York, Susan B. Anthony, and advocate for the women's right to equal pay and the right to vote 20 years before it became law. The government tried to take the Indians in my show back to the reservation once, but they argued that they were being treated well. So the government assigned me as being an Indian agent to keep things legal like. Across the ocean, England's Queen Victoria was making plans to celebrate the 50th year of her reign, her Golden Jubilee. An American exposition was to be a part of it. My Buffalo Bill's Wild West was invited to partake. So me, Annie, 97 Indians, 120 cowboys, 180 horses, 18 buffalo, elk, bears, everything, assorted animals. We were all to get on the ship, stayed in Nebraska, and set sail for 2 weeks to England. Well, old Indian legend has it that all Indians perish at the ocean's horizon. So they'd only get on board at the last minute after a lot of convincing. And unfortunately, all their fears got reignited soon after setting sail, and seasickness set in. We all thought we were going to die. And I would have been singing their death song right along with them if I knew the tune. Annie was the only one who was unaffected. But 2 weeks later we got there, and England loved us. Their royalty, they were so enamored with me, Annie, the Indians, everybody. We were highly sought after guests of all kinds of royalty. Queen Victoria would leave over 25 years of self-imposed isolation at Windsor Castle mourning the death of her husband. She did not go out in public. She came out to see my show, and she must have liked it. Because this is the first time that a British monarch would ever acknowledge the American flag. A lot of folks saw that as a real big deal. I made a lot of friends over there, and I met a couple of folks that you might know of. One of them, a fan of the show, his name is Bram Stoker. He created a character modeled after me named Quincy Morris, who'd be one of the ones to do in the vampire in his book, Dracula. Another one called Lord Baden Powell, got to be good friends with him. He'd come back to my tent. We'd spend a lot of time together talking about things. And he would implement a lot of frontier ways of mine when he created the Boy Scouts a couple years later. Some folks still say that the neckerchief that the Scouts wear today was inspired by me. When I got back from England, I had an urgent message from General Miles to go talk to Chief Sitting Bull. While we were going, a lot of tribes adopted what you call a ghost dance as a way of celebrating the belief that life would get back to the way it was before the white man ever showed up. And today you might say it went viral. And it ended up scaring a lot of the politicians that this would stir up the Indians again. And Sitting Bull was still seen as a powerful leader. It was to be apprehended up at the Standing Rock Agency up in the Dakotas to try and put an end to this ghost dance stuff. But General Miles knew me and Sitting Bull's friendship, and he thought I might be able to go up there peacefully and work something out. But while I was on the way, the head agent up there named McLaughlin, he didn't like me being in the mix. So he came up with a plan to have some of his men try and delay me by getting me drunk over at Fort Yates. And as you know, this is not the first time that alcohol has touched these lips. So after the last of them fell, I thanked them for their hospitality, and I continued on my way. This caused McLaughlin to go to Plan B, and he contacted President Harrison and had me recalled, saying he had matters in hand and didn't need a showman like me to get in the way. But he surely didn't have matters in hand. When his men went to apprehend Sitting Bull resisted and was shot dead for it. Well, as might be expected, a gunfight between Sitting Bull's men and McLaughlin's men would ensue. And right when the shooting started up, the horse that I gave Sitting Bull went right into his show routine, dancing on his back legs, waving his hooves, just like I taught him. This scared the bejesus out of everybody, thinking that Sitting Bull's spirit had now entered the horse. Though I'm not sure what effect this had on the outcome, I'm pretty sure it added to all the excitement. By the time the smoke cleared, 8 of Sitting Bull's and 6 of McLaughlin's men lay dead. And a shameful massacre of over 200 Sioux men and women and children would result from that fracas just 14 days later at a place called Wounded Knee. And I've lost more than one night of sleep wondering what might have happened if I had gotten a chance to talk to Sitting Bull first. But over the next few years, my Buffalo Bill's Wild West would perform for over 20 million people all across America and Europe, performing in places like Austria, Belgium, Germany, Italy, Spain, Scotland, France, everywhere. We must have made a good impression in France and Paris, because they still have the Buffalo Bill's Wild West at their Disney World. Well, I might have been the most famous man in the world, but a savvy businessman I was not. And I lost a lot of money, my trusting nature, on some mining interests and get-rich-quick schemes. But even after my bad luck with my town of Rome, I made me about $11 million in today's money, and I decided to make me a new town. I call it Cody after my last name up by Yellowstone Park. And I sunk all my money into it. And I even built a hotel there called the Irma, named after my youngest daughter, that still stands today. But I know a lot more about buffalo hunting than I did about building a town. And all the money it'd take to get the necessary irrigation water to town would get me in some big money trouble. And admittedly, I had me some wife trouble too. My celebrity was not necessarily good on our marriage because of me being gone a lot and all the women would be attracted to me. You can see why. Between that and Lulu trying to poison me and almost kill me with some gypsy love potion that she found, we had a stormy romance. Well, we applied to get a divorce, but a judge wouldn't let us because judges could do that back then. It's probably a good thing because we made up and stayed friends to the very end. But but being broke and bad luck kept me from retiring like I wanted to. So I ended up having to do several years of so-called farewell tours. Farewell. This time I mean it. Really, no kidding. I was coming up on 70 years old, and a lot of times I needed help getting off my horse issue at the end of the show. And I finally lost the show altogether when bad weather delays kept me from repaying that no-good Harry Taman, the Denver Post owner, who foreclosed on my show just to make me ride with the Sells Photo Circus that he also owned. And I was working up a plan to put my show back together, and I never got the chance. January 10th, 1917, a small bedroom in my sister May's house in 2932 Lafayette Street in Denver, Colorado. I would cross the Great Divide and ride my last trail on up to heaven. Denver, Colorado, North Platte, Nebraska, and Cody, Wyoming would all fight to have me buried there in Denver 1. And I'd be buried 6 months later that it took to get a suitable road to the top of Lookout Mountain in Golden. I had asked to be buried there because you can see the plains of 4 states from my grave. Mine's still the biggest funeral Colorado's ever seen. 25,000 people from all over the world lined up the streets for miles. People still come, I hear. Looking back, I suppose it was a life like anyone's. Good luck and bad, pride and regret. But it's the kind of life you only get from taking chances, chasing dreams, and seeing where your own trail leads. And it was a life that would forever define how the world would view the American frontier. It was a good life. It was my life. It was the life of Buffalo Bill. I thank you all for being here and listening to my stories. And I will be right down there a little bit later if you have any questions. I'd like to meet you.